the Five Spot. I'm your host, Donovan McNabb, joined with Armando Segura. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to dive into. Young quarterbacks are starting to make their name in this league. Will Levis, a guy who people watched in the draft, had a lot of comments about if he was worthy of being drafted early, end up dropping out of the first round and getting drafted by the Tennessee Titans. We're still trying to figure out what's going on in Pittsburgh with their offense is being non-existent with a lot of weapons on the outside. Obviously, the running back situation has been one that's been impressive. Their offensive line, to me, is still in shambles. But more important, the conversation is about their offensive coordinator. But let's dive into it, Armando, of everything that we've seen yesterday. Was it more impressive for you for Tennessee, or did it still have questions for you about Pittsburgh?
Well, Donovan, anytime we have the word shambles in the opening of our show, you know that something's not that impressive because it's shambles. I love that word, shambles. And so, and you could apply it, by the way, to either one of those two teams. Dude, can we start with Will Levis? I mean,
yeah,
I like him. I can't dislike him right now, and I can tell you why, but I really, being the nerd of the show, I'm more interested in knowing what the former NFL star quarterback thinks of the current rookie quarterback.
Well, when I watch Will Levis, everyone was enamored by his arm strength, first and foremost, and he can make every throw. He was more of a guy that people questioned if he cared more about the look of his body than the production on the field. And hey, listen, I would never come down on a guy, especially who focuses on, his body fat or the way his body may look or feel. I work out 5 to 6 days a week, so I know where that's coming from. But when I watch him, the thing that I watch a little bit more over the last couple of seasons in Kentucky was more of his footwork. Now, he's a guy that he'll make some off-balance throws, some sidearm throws. He'll flick the ball 30 yards downfield, and sometimes it may get you in trouble. And I think a lot of these young guys watch Patrick Mahomes, and that's kind of how their trainers attack their training sessions. And you start to see it in games. And in this game, it almost really got him in trouble. And at the end of the game, it got him in trouble because he didn't obviously see the safety rush sitting in the middle of the field, which the last play was picked off by Alexander. When you just can't throw it down the middle of the field when they're having that three cloud look at the safety position. But I was impressed by his second performance and what he was able to do in that offense, Armando.
Yeah, so I was impressed too, and this is the reason, because everything was so sucky. And, it's easy to play quarterback, I think, when you have a clean pocket and everybody's open and you've got a running game going. And then, most guys that are in the NFL, they succeed in those situations because everything's going well around you. But it's when things are going poorly around you that I really judge a quarterback by. And to me, everything was going crappy around him. The offensive line, I mean, every 5 minutes you had a guy coming in and out because they were hurt. And the guys that were hurt were backups anyway. And then that offense only has one real, dynamic kind of receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. Everybody else is kind of, meh. And then, the running game wasn't going because that's what everybody tries to stop with the Tennessee Titans. So it was up to the rookie, Will Levis. Oh, I forgot. Also, the play calling was junk. I don't know if you remember, but there was like 3:56 left, and they got the ball 4 points down or something like that. And their first play was a reverse. Their second play was a run. Their third play was a run not to Derrick Henry. And then on fourth down, they basically said, hey, rookie, go save us. It's fourth down. The game is on the line. Could you do something for us? That was terrible, terrible play calling. So was he bad? He threw the interception. I grant you. Dude, that's the last play of the game. He's trying to make something happen in my book. Not great, but you're trying to make something happen, right?
Yeah, he's young. He's young, and there's no way to come down on Will Levis being in his second start. And what we've seen from his first start to now, I would say that I was impressed by his poise. I was impressed by his pocket presence. I was also impressed because, yes, they put that on his shoulders when they stopped running the football with Derrick Henry, and he was effective throwing the football. Obviously that last play is what everyone will remember, but I look at it in the sense of correctable mistakes. And that's something that I've seen so far with this offense. But on the flip side, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I expected so much from Kenny Pickett. Coming out of the preseason, he was on fire in the preseason. And when you look at his weapons, and listen, people can talk about, well, they're young, or, we can put it off on, well, the running back situation it's not where you thought it would be. But to me, I looked at it in the sense of they have more of a complementary piece at running back, because both of those running backs can do 2 or 3 different things that, to me, are exceptional. Their wide receiver position, you got guys getting open, but Kenny Pickett he's inaccurate. And it goes back to me, and I know a lot of people won't go this far, but when it gets cold, but they've been playing bad all season. But when it gets cold, remember, Kenny Pickett has small hands, and he plays with a glove. And the only person that I've known that played with a glove was Kurt Warner. And so, you've seen a lot of balls starting to fly. You've seen a lot of balls starting to kind of get high and wide, or whatever it may be, with wide receivers getting open. So now the onus goes on the offensive coordinator, which I think is Canada, and they're asking for his head. They're asking for him to be fired. Byron Leftwich is a name to bring in. But even with that said, it's so funny with Pittsburgh and good friend of mine, Mike Tomlin, they're still winning. They're still winning. They have a winning record, which he's always had a winning record as a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. So I just think, in my eyes, that these are things that should be corrected. And it's really going to start to move to Kenny Pickett. But who are you going to go to? Mitch Trubisky?
Yeah, no, you're not going to go to Mitch Trubisky. No, never go. Here's an idea. Never go to Mitch Trubisky, unless, of course, you got nobody else. And then I might still go with Najee at quarterback ahead of Mitch Trubisky. Kidding. They have been blaming in Pittsburgh Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, for the anemic offense. Last night, this game, it was not Matt Canada. There were multiple times where the scheme got receivers open on third down, and then the execution was bad. I saw a couple of drops. I saw Pickens basically catch a touchdown pass, except for the fact that he didn't drag his back foot, which every 99 out of 100 NFL receivers drag that back foot, and he somehow decided, I don't need to. So no touchdown. And then, like you said, Pickett was inaccurate. Multiple times, receivers open, not the scheme's fault, not the play caller's fault, on the execution of the quarterback or the receiver or something other than the call. So, yeah, they got offensive issues in Pittsburgh. It's interesting that you say it doesn't get better. So it's harder in the cold weather with little baby hands. Is that what you're saying?
No, I did not say that Kenny Pickett has Burger King hands. From that little commercial with the little guy with the hands.
When the Whopper is like this and your hands look like this.
I did not say that, but I just remember the measurables at the combine when people had talked about his hands, and I don't know if it was like a 9.5 or so, when most quarterbacks are at the 10, 10 and a half, 11, for the bigger hands like myself. But
What were your hand size?
I believe mine was at 11 and a half, somewhere in there. I can palm a basketball. I just remember that conversation. And then when I watched this game, with the balls kind of flying, they were sailing high, sailing wide, and I see them with the gloves on. And so, obviously things have to change the way things have been going with this offense. But this defense, to me, you have a rookie corner that they were going after with DeAndre Hopkins. I understand that a young rookie that they drafted out of Penn State. I played with his dad. I mean, he's gonna be he's playing with a good team, but he's gonna be a good player. But I'm looking more at the offense. And is it something that can change, or do you think that this is going to be something going forward that they're going to have to make a decision, maybe at the quarterback position?
Well, years ago, everybody said you can't teach accuracy and you can't improve it. I think we've seen multiple quarterbacks improve their accuracy.
Right. Yes.
But to go from improving to elite is a big
jump.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen. But Kenny Pickett, we kind of forget this is his second year, and
right.
You really probably shouldn't make definitive statements about a quarterback without at least 20 games under his belt, and he doesn't have that yet. So can it change? I guess it can change. Maybe they could get him an actual running game. That would help. But is he going to be the guy, or has he been the guy that can put the entire offense on his shoulders and carry it? No. But neither is Mitch Trubisky. Just want to get that out there.
I'm not going to dive back into the Mitch Trubisky train. I just think for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think it's correctable, and I think they could change it. They can come up with some screenplays, because they do have two dynamic running backs that can turn a 5-yard route into a 25, 30-yard gain, or possibly touchdown. But I'm expected to see that. But let's go out to the West Coast, where the Las Vegas Raiders have made some changes. They've chopped some people on the block, more heads than one. They've made a big decision, which I like the Antonio Pierce move of bringing him up into the head coach position. It changes the dynamic, changes the energy. It also changes the mentality of a lot of these players that are on that football team, from an aggressive standpoint and more of a let's do this now standpoint. I don't know if the decision of sitting Garoppolo right now, because I would like to see Garoppolo under Antonio Pierce and under the new tutelage of their offensive coordinator, who's now moved from, I believe, the quarterback coach position. So I would love to see that instead of going to the young quarterback. But when you look at the decision that was made, Armando, obviously we both talked about over the last few episodes of something had to change. Do you think that they should have not only fired Josh McDaniels, but then you fired the GM right then too?
Yeah, I got to give it to Mark Davis, because Josh McDaniels had a 6-year contract when he signed with that team. Right. He came in and he decided, I'm going to come, but I'm going to insulate myself from being fired after only 2 years. And guess what? Right. It didn't work. So Mark Davis is on the hook for he was making close to $10 million a year. So Mark Davis is on the hook for $40 million with Josh McDaniels. And I know that doesn't matter much to the greater audience and the fan base, because it's not their money and it doesn't affect the salary cap, but it tells you how intent on making that move Mark Davis, the owner, was, that he doesn't care that he's burning up $40 million. Having said that, I watched that Antonio Pierce press conference, and Dang, man, that dude's impressive. He is the anti-Josh McDaniel in that he moves you. Josh McDaniels is this like analytical,
Rain Man. Rain Man.
Right. Yes. And this guy is like a man. And he, Antonio Pierce, he talks to you and you understand what the hell he's saying. Whereas Josh McDaniel talks to you and it's like, you got to go back to your calculator to figure it out what he just said. Right. I mean, you played for a long time against Antonio Pierce, right?
Right.
You saw what that guy's about.
Well, the thing is, it's a linebacker mentality and an understanding approach, preparation. And whenever you play the middle linebacker position, I respect you because you see the game just like a quarterback. You understand dynamics. You understand formations. You understand what they're trying to do in situations. And I think that's a little bit of what was missing in the play calling offensively. Because when I watch offensively, and I've questioned this before, how do you have the league's leading rusher last year? And then this year you come back and you can't even run the ball. Like he's trying to force himself through the A and B gap of small windows. When you look at last year, not that the hole was that big, but he was picking and choosing and exploding through. And so that opened up your play action game. Now it's almost like 7-on-7 where you run the ball a 2-yard game, you run the ball a 3-yard game. We know you're throwing the football, so let's just drop back in our zone. And so I just think going forward, I would like to see, one, the decision-making of, I believe it's O'Connell that's starting now, young quarterback, but I liked him in the preseason. Now, it was preseason. He had one start this year when Garoppolo was out. I liked his poise, just like we've seen Will Levis. I liked his poise in the pocket, delivered accurately. It seemed like Davante Adams had a different type of energy when he was in there because everyone loves the backup until the backup's in there for about 4 or 5 games. But I just think for the Las Vegas Raiders, they have a chance to turn this thing around. And as they turn this thing around, and I'm not saying they're going to win 12 games or 11 games, but if they can win, if they can come out of this thing with 8 or 9 wins, I think this helps Antonio Pierce. And then it also helps going forward with former players that are on coaching staff, them being comfortable with making that decision to bring them into that head coaching spot.
So let me tell you what's about to happen. That team now, their team meeting went great. Everybody's fired up. Davante Adams said that he's ready to run through a wall. And that's exactly what you're going to see with that team this week. And it might be what you see from that team next week. But because you got that lift and that initial lift, but you can't live off of that lift.
Right.
What I've seen with interim coaches is they provide a lift, but then eventually you got to be on your stuff.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, execution, discipline, scheme, and all of that stuff, and teaching, and that generally, declines a little bit. So what I guess we're going to see is a very fired up team here the first couple of weeks, and then I believe they'll probably come back down to earth. Let me say this about their new general manager, Champ Kelly. 4 years ago or 3 years ago, the New York Jets interviewed 4 general manager candidates. They interviewed Terry Fontenot, they interviewed Scott Fitterer, Joe Douglas, and Champ Kelly. 3 of those 4 guys were general managers in the NFL, 4 days ago. And now 4 out of 4 are general managers in the NFL. Champ Kelly knows what he's doing. They're in good hands personnel-wise. That guy's going to be a star. If not with the Raiders as their general manager, eventually with someone. Just wanted to put that out there because he is legit.
Well, it's going to be interesting, obviously when you have decision makers with experience, because, we see so many times of guys who have been in organizations who are assistant GMs, falling behind someone who's been successful, and they get the main job, and they want to make a splash early instead of going to get the little pieces that people will look at and say, I don't understand why they signed that guy. Where it's bringing pieces in for specific roles to set up the splash guy. And for the Raiders, when I look at this football team, number one, it all starts with the quarterback. And people can talk about, Derek Carr and the decision that they made. I still don't think Derek Carr was their future because they were making too many decisions and too many coaches coming in, and it wasn't their guy, so to speak. So that all happens with getting a guy that's been in the league probably for about 8 to 9 years, or maybe 7 to 8 years, that you can work with, but also going into the draft. Then you have to have dynamic pieces like they bring in Devontae Adams. You have a star receiver. Josh Jacobs is someone you got to make a decision on, going forward. Offensive line and D-line are where you go into free agency and the draft. You have to be able to drive those pieces because they are the staple of both sides of the ball. And then get you a middle linebacker. And so I just think it's not a rebuilding year for the Raiders. They have pieces, but they have to answer the bell at the quarterback position. If it's the young kid, then that's great. He can hold it down for maybe this season and maybe next season, but they have to go into the draft and get a guy that brings a little bit of something, not more Lamar Jackson type of ability, but I would say more of maybe like a Trevor Lawrence. That's fundamentally sound, throw it accurate, has the ability to get outside the pocket, but some dynamic ability like that.
So you're Josh McDaniels. Congratulations. I just gave you $40 million over the next 4 years. What do you do? Because you're not going to. What's that?
He'll be back as an offensive coordinator. He'll go back as an offensive consultant somewhere, and will eventually, in about 2 years, become offensive coordinator somewhere.
I bet you he's going to go into the Alabama. Everybody
has to get the validation by the Godfather.
What do they call it when the FBI changes your identity and like hides you somewhere? He's going into that Alabama hide your identity and remake you as a different human being program at Alabama. So that's gonna happen.
Witness protection. You're going to witness
protection. Yes, he's going to go into the coach protection program at Alabama. Yeah. So remember we talked about him and why he was so good at New England, Tom Brady, and why he won 3 Super Bowl rings as the New England offensive coordinator, Tom Brady, and why he got hired a couple of times as a head coach, Tom Brady. That's gone now, bro. Tom Brady's not there anymore. You're on your own.
Who was part owner of the Raiders? Say it again.
Tom Brady.
He tried to help him. But I'll say this, just to kind of wrap it up, though. I will say this. Sometimes you have to make decisions because it's thrown in front of you. And I think I wouldn't say it was a drastic emotional decision by Mark Davis, but he did just win a championship with the Aces, which he brought in Becky Hammond. So after that high of being in championship, hooray with your favorite league, the WNBA, which I'm still trying to work on getting you entertained and your knowledge of the players in the WNBA up. But I just think going forward for the Raiders, keep an eye on the 3rd and 4th week of how they play. Because you mentioned it. You'll be on that high for the first 2 weeks. And that 3rd week, it starts to settle in of what direction you want to go in. So I'll be interested to see by week 4, week 5, how this team is playing. And if they're playing at that level where they're highly competitive, it could be something to watch all throughout the season. But let's move on to free agency. Well, I wouldn't say free agency. The trades that happened during midseason. It seems like the Commanders had a full flea market, swap-o-rama, asking you can receive defensive players of moving Chase Young and Montez Sweat. When I look at that, of losing two of your best defensive players, one go to San Francisco, which he follows his former teammate, which I'm still trying to figure out how they allowed that to happen. And then Sweat goes to Chicago, which he's like, yeah, I'm just going to hold off on the contract situation. And then you continue to move all throughout the league of these decisions that were made. Which one or two moves that were made, and then we'll go into the ones that weren't made, kind of stick in your mind?
So I like the Sweat trade for the Bears. And I like it enough that I can understand the criticism of it. I was watching yesterday where Mike Lombardi was on another show, and He was ripping that trade for the Bears. He was like, you paid too much. A second-round pick for a rental is not worth it. And I get it. Montez Sweat looks like a rental right now because he's not signed for beyond this year. And I get it. He is not, say, like this super duper double digit every year sack guy. I get that.
Not yet.
Right. But in the same conversation, Lombardi is saying every year in the draft, every team has maybe 14 to 18 guys that they think are first-round picks. Starters. And he said Montez Sweat is a first-round pick next year. So in the same conversation, he says the Bears gave up too much by giving up a second-round pick. A second-round pick for Montez Sweat. And he's also saying that Montez Sweat is actually a first-round pick in next year's draft. So that makes it look better for the Bears, in my estimation. Right. And this also makes it look better. Look, Montez Sweat may do whatever Montez Sweat wants to do, but the Bears got $100 million in cap space next year, and they can do whatever they want to do. And at the end of the day, my least favorite phrase of all time, at the end of the day, if they want to sign Montez Sweat and keep him, they will be able to outbid everybody. Because they're now paying their quarterback, and they got more money disposable than anybody. So, let's see how that works out. But I don't hate this trade for the Bears.
I don't hate this trade for the Bears because it at least shows that they're trying to advance in different areas. Now, we know about the trade, obviously, with DJ Moore and the picks that they received and gave up for him, and knowing that if they continue to have the season they're having, they'll have the number 1 and number 2 picks, supposedly. And so people are talking Marvin Harrison and Caleb Williams. Now, if that happens, and you look at now the Sweat trade, that kind of works out in Chicago's favor, because it takes me back when Khalil Mack, remember they made the trade for Khalil Mack in Chicago, and then all of a sudden that defense started playing the way they were playing. And then if that happens, where Sweat is that piece to elevate this defense and add more pieces to it, and they do have the number 1 or 2 pick, or even both, now you have offensive weapons that you're bringing in with DJ Moore, and then they can shore up that offensive line and D-line through free agency and also through the draft, like mid-draft or like late in the draft. I think Chicago has a chance, especially in the division where, you've seen what Minnesota was, and now Kirk Cousins is out. Jordan Love he's on the struggle bus right now. But also what people need to take into account with Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers struggled in his first year as well as a starter. So, I would kind of sit back and be patient a little bit in Green Bay. And then Detroit, listen, I love what Campbell's been doing over there. And And Campbell, to me, could possibly get Coach of the Year this year. And he's in that running, I believe, because of what he's done in Detroit. But Chicago has a chance to elevate if this all kind of happens with the Sweat trade and then obviously the draft of next year. But let's talk about the things that didn't happen, Armando. Now, I talked about Derrick Henry, and I thought that they should have found a way to get more picks in Tennessee. Obviously, he's a dynamic running back. There was trades on the table, blockbuster trades on the table to give up for Derrick Henry, but Tennessee said no. Do you think this is going to hurt Dallas going forward in their run game?
Dallas asked Jerry Jones, and he'll go, "Come on, man. Nothing hurts Dallas. We just won the World Series. We're good."
He wasn't the owner. He wasn't the owner of that.
He'll take credit. He'll also take credit for, the garbage pickup on time in Dallas. He'll take credit. Look, Derrick Henry, I don't think the Titans wanted to trade him and obviously didn't because of what he means right now to the organization. And in regard to, we talked about Will Levis. I think that if Will Levis had been a bomb that first game out last week against the Falcons, Derrick Henry might have more likely gone somewhere because they would have said, we got no shot. This guy is a developmental guy to the max. We got no shot. But the kid comes out and throws 4 touchdown passes in his first game, in his first start, and you're going, we're only a game under 500. Let's go. And you don't let's go if Derrick Henry is let's gone. So I think that's the reason that he stuck around. Plus, that locker room, they absorbed a big blow with, the farm system to Philadelphia, just sending them talent with Kevin Byard, the latest one. It would hurt to lose Derrick Henry in that locker room.
And I think Compton, their linebacker, was traded also to Philadelphia, I believe, too. I think he might have been in that trade. But then I agree with you with the Derrick Henry deal. Now, I talked about that they should have made the move and got some picks. But in that game that you talked about against Atlanta, Derrick Henry had over 100 yards rushing. And so it's kind of hard to let a guy go after you just put up over 400 yards of total offense with a young quarterback and your running back has over 100 yards rushing. But I look also in the sense, remember Ezekiel Elliott was in that conversation. If New England would trade him back to Dallas, I look at some of these teams like Minnesota made a trade, which I still can't to this day understand why Arizona traded Dobbs. I mean, are you expecting Kyler Murray to come back healthy? Like, are you saying that we can now kind of, see what we can get for Dobbs because he's shown he can play? He'll be a starter in Minnesota, and we'll just kind of tank for at least the next 4 or 5 weeks until Kyler Murray can come out, and we'll see what he can do before we decide to trade him. I'm really trying to figure out what's going on in Arizona because they're super competitive with Dobbs. But now you just traded him away to try to open up space. Was it for Kyler Murray in your eyes?
I think Kyler Murray, plays this week or next week. He's ready. It's time, and they need to see him so that they can make decisions in the offseason. And honestly, my friend, I'm tired of seeing AAA quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm tired of it. If Kyler Murray doesn't start this week, they go with Clayton Tune. the guy sounds like like a band, like a singer, Clayton Tune. So in another game, you mentioned Minnesota. We got Jaron Hall against Taylor Heineke. In another game, we might get PJ Williams again for the Browns. In another game, we're going to get Brett Rippon for the Rams. Rippon. because, and not Mark Rippon, Brett Rippon. I mean, in another game, for the Bears. Who's gonna start for the Bears this week? DM?
Baggett. Hey, so what's his name? Tyler Baggett. He may start. And I was impressed by what I seen the first game. The second game, kind of reality hit a little bit. I thought in that Rams game he did okay. But, I think he's deserving of a third chance.
Nah. Nah. And by the way, let's do this here. Come on. Work with me here. The guy's name is Bagent. Bagent? Let's sing it.
I like Baggett. I like Baggett.
But that doesn't fit the song.
It's not the way you say it, but I like Baggett. Yeah.
Secret Bagent, man. Secret Bagent, man. Come on. Okay. Sorry.
I will not take any ownership to the dancing that you're seeing from Armando.
I feel like that guy on the Will Smith Beverly Hills.
Oh, Carlton.
Yeah.
Carlton. Hey.
He's doing that. Which is not me, by the way. I'm more like, yeah.
Watch out now. Hey, well, let's go ahead and close this show down before we start really losing it. Hey, join us back here at the 5 spot next Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit about what happens this weekend. Obviously, the new coaches stepping in Las Vegas of how Antonio Pierce changes things there. What quarterbacks are on the rise and what quarterbacks are falling. So join us here at the 5 spot for more.